Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
When we got to the Rhine, it was murder because Jerry knew we were coming. Every farmhouse was occupied by Germans. They put a lot of smoke down, so instead of coming down a 400 foot, which is the lowest height you can drop from, we had to go up to 1,000 foot. We were also travelling quite fast. I was number 20, last man out, so you can imagine how far off target I were. Miles out! I and 10 others came down near a farmhouse, which had an 88mm gun just outside it. Just before my feet touched the ground, a bullet smashed through my left elbow, so I lay on my stomach and pretended to be dead. I saw 9 of the others come down, some into trees. The Germans shot them as they hung there. It was a sickening sight. I was in big trouble. I'm left-handed, and my left arm was useless. But when 5 Germans came towards me, I got hold of my Sten gun in my right hand, and as they get close, I fired, and I reckon I killed them all. Then I made for the farmhouse, hoping to get some help, but as I peered round a corner, I saw German rifles poking out of every window. I tried to give myself some cover by throwing a smoke bomb, but just as I was making for the nearest ditch, a German SS officer came up and shot me in the back from 10 yards away with a Luger pistol. Of course, I spun round and fell down, and this officer grabbed my left arm and shoved it through the straps of my webbing. Then he took off my water bottle, flung it in a ditch, and looted whatever he could. I was worried that he'd finished me off with my knife, but I had the presence of mind to lie on it. And when he'd gone, I got hold of it and threw it in the ditch. And that was Sergeant Derek Glaister of the 7th Parachute Battalion, which of course is the Somerset Light Infantry.
Yeah, very strong, James.
And having a really, really shocking time at the start of Operation Varsity.
Yes, we'll get into Varsity in detail in this episode, or to an extent, because it is the lessons of Arnhem, after all, Varsity. And I think we may touch on things. We've talked about Market Garden a little bit on this podcast, so we'll reflect on some of those aspects. Yeah, but welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, Victory in Europe, episode 3. The Americans have got across the Rhine. Plunder is nearly underway, is about to happen. With it, the following morning, the accompanying airborne operation, Operation Varsity. So there's all these moving parts, but this is the big set-piece, belt and braces crossing of the Rhine by 21st Army Group, US 9th Army.
Yes, we discussed the extreme preparations for it in the last episode, and we left it tantalizingly on a cliffhanger of would they be able to get across okay after all this preparation and the 250,000 tons of supplies and 5,500 artillery pieces.
And then it was our water pigeon, Operation Widgeon, that was leading the way. So,
well, this is the 1,600 troops of 1st Commando Brigade.
Yeah.
And if you remember from the last episode, we were saying that a direct assault on the town of Wesel is seen as way too risky. You know, obviously where there's settlements, there's going to be stronger defences. So they attack a little way to the north. And the idea is for them to then turn into the town and capture it, following a subsequent raid by bombers to plaster the town. So it's the 46 Royal Marine Commandos are the first off, and they head into Buffaloes at 9:59, not at 9:58 or 10 o'clock, but 9:59 p.m. And they're getting into the boats when, a minute later, the immense barrage begins at 10 p.m.
That very much smells of a war diary going, we were in our boats by 10 o'clock by the time the barrage started.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. That's exactly what's happened. And as we've discussed in the past, battalion war diaries aren't always to be seen as 100%
No.
spot on. For the most part, they get across okay in their buffaloes, apart from a phosphorus grenade does go off in one of the buffaloes, which kills 9, but otherwise they get across fine. I mean, just imagine that. Despite the strong current, and we were talking yesterday, it's going at 7 feet 3 inches a second.
Yep.
They land on a muddy beach because Brigadier Mills Roberts guesses it won't be heavily defended. And it turns out he's completely right. So they get across and they're kind of, pushing inland. Then the next up are the 6th Army Commandos, not the Royal Marine Commandos, and they cross in storm boats, the dreaded storm boats with a 55 horsepower outboard. Yeah, all that. And one is so overladen it sinks almost immediately, but the others manage to get across, and then they're followed by the 45th Royal Marine Commandos. Then eventually the barrage stops, and 250 heavy bombers, Lancasters and Halifaxes and whatnot, come over and plaster Wiesel. And once they've passed, the commandos then circle around and the sound of the town. Yep. And the town is it's been
destroyed. Yeah.
Oh my God, have you seen those aerial photographs of it?
Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
nothing left.
Moon landscape of pot marks and the occasional bit of masonry still sort of standing, but otherwise gone. So they're issued with lots of maps. And of course, the maps don't work at all because there's no town left. Crazy, I mean, just absolutely hopeless. Mills Roberts wrote, the streets were unrecognizable. Many of the buildings were mounds of rubble. Huge craters abounded, and into these flowed water mains and sewers, accompanied by escapes of flaming gas. I mean, it conjures a picture of total hell, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it also shows that if you can get the heavies to bomb the right place, they're incredibly effective, aren't they? I mean,
certainly by this stage of the war, they know what they're about.
By this stage of the war, yeah.
They can land it on the pickle barrel.
Yeah, exactly. So 6th Commando go into this inferno. German 180th Infantry Division are defending, and they do what they can, but it's not a lot.
No, it's not a lot.
The commanders take control of the ruined vessel.
Yeah, well done. Great.
Bravo, everybody. And they have 400 prisoners of war by dawn. Sergeant Major Woodcock leads a charge onto a bunker that's the headquarters of 16th Flak Division. And they find themselves actually being fired at by the commander, General Major Friedrich Deutsch. He's shot and killed. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they're going through afterwards, they're sort of ransacking the place. They found a map of every single flak position, which is quite a useful bit of intel.
Yes, yeah. What happens then is that with the airborne coming in, as we'll find, there's then a change in what the German guns are doing, and also what British artillery is doing, because that you can't fire your guns while gliders and stuff are coming in. So there's a sort of pause, isn't there, in the fire orders, and that's a bit sticky for the commandos. Because after all, as we said in an earlier episode in this series, artillery is everything. Once you get your guns across, once you get your guns online, from the Allied perspective, you're in charge of things.
Yes, completely.
Once the airdrops are out of the way by 1:30. The artillery's back online and the commandos have got Wesel, and basically that's for that aspect of the crossing.
Yep. So next up is the Highlanders. That's 51st Highland Division, old friends of the show. They go just to the north of the town of Rees.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been to that crossing point. It is quite interesting. It's Rees is it's just sort of over there. If you see what I mean, if you're looking across, it's just to the right on the kind of other side, and there's this kind of big flat floodplain on the other side. So there's the dikes, the flood dikes either side.
Yeah.
And then it's just completely flat either side of it. So they are led by the 1st Gordons, who's commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Martin Lindsay. And we all remember him because he was the guy who kind of supposedly spoke out about D-Day at a party, but didn't really, and was snitched by Terence Otway.
Yes.
And Otway then took over and commanded 9 Para for the attack on
Normandy, yeah.
But he was a much loved commander, really, really competent. And, he doesn't sort of stick around kind of unused for long, and ends up leading the 1st Gordons, and very successfully too. So I think it's rather nice that he's leading the way on the charge over the River Rhine. And they begin crossing at 11:15 p.m. in Buffaloes, but with a follow-up in yet more of the dreaded storm boats. Absolutely no one likes them. Only a dozen of the 30 that were promised were serviceable. So, of course, that is kind of slightly incomprehensible after all this preparation.
Yeah.
It's one thing they can't get right. And, of course, this leads to delays because you can only take 10 people across at once, and you've got these sappers in them.
Yeah.
2 sappers and 8 men. So if you've only got 12 instead of 30, that means that it takes way, way longer to get the men across, leading to delays of 2 hours. And in the course of this operation, 50 sappers are killed.
Oh, God.
getting them across, either shot or drowned or whatever. But anyway, it's still a success. Gordon and Sutherland Highlanders take 100 POWs. With the 5th Black Watch, they take Rees. The town also wrecked, just like Wesel, but is held by 2 battalions of Fallschirmjäger. I mean, when you say 2 battalions, that sort of suggests that you're getting on for 1,800 troops or something. You're not. It's a few hundred by this stage.
But also, when we say Fallschirmjäger, we don't mean
elite
flinty parachutists of 3 years previously.
No, we certainly don't. So this is where the Canadian Brigade also crosses, and they overrun a group of Volkssturm who have old 1913 rifles and who quickly Henderhocker.
Yeah.
So a stretch of the shore is secured, but not the village of Speldrop, which is just a little bit further inland. And this is held by men of the 8th Fallschirmjäger Division. Weren't they the lot at Lanzarote?
Yeah, I think so. But you say that, I mean, by name they are.
Yeah.
The headquarters structure might be the same people. These are badged divisions, aren't they, essentially?
Yeah.
People in Luftwaffe uniforms, essentially. And there's a big battle there between the Fallschirmjäger and the 1st Black Watch of the Canadians.
And then tragedy strikes.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Highlanders commanding officer, Major General Tom Rennie, goes ashore to have a look, check things out. And as he gets out of a Jeep, a mortar round lands nearby and he's killed.
Yes, and the Jeep driver's okay. And he goes, "Are you all right, sir?" Because he's just sort of lying on the ground.
God.
Apparently completely uninjured.
Yeah.
And then he realises he's dead.
Blast.
Yeah.
Yes, that's awful. So Major General Gordon Macmillan takes over. And I think if anyone's going to replace anyone at the head of the Highlanders, you want someone called Gordon Macmillan.
Gordon Macmillan. Yeah.
At Speldrop, the fighting continues, and the Fallschirmjäger have been reinforced with 115 Panzergrenadier Regiment. And so the Black Watch Canadians are outnumbered, which I think is quite interesting when this operation is often described as this sort of massive, preponderant, overbalanced effort by the 21st Army Group. Actually, there are situations where this happens.
Yeah. Well, it's the point of the triangle again. It's the same old thing that we did when we were talking about Sword Beach and so on. On paper, it looks massive organisation.
Yeah.
But the spearheads are often, you're talking about hundreds of men and not tens of thousands.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Highland Light Infantry is sent in to relieve them. And artillery, again, Allied artillery comes to the rescue because Speldrop is a challenge because it's flat. So attacking it is difficult, isn't it? The terrain's flat. It's 1,200 yards inland for the banks of the river. So there's basically no cover.
Yeah,
so
that's the problem. And there really isn't any cover there.
Yeah. So what you get is 6 field regiments, 2 medium regiments, 2 heavy regiments, 7.2-inch batteries.
That'll do it.
7.2, 200 guns in all. Creeping barrage, blam, 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 blam.
Each firing kind of, 10, 15 rounds, 10 rounds a minute. Soon adds up. That's the end of Speldrop.
Yeah, exactly.
Speldrop's not much to look at these days, it has to be said.
None of these places are they? They all got sort of rubbed out, didn't they? And then also the Highland Light Infantry's anti-tank platoon come up and they have a troop of Wasp carriers, which is the Bren carrier flamethrower.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Have you seen the footage of those? Is really actually terrifying.
Yeah, completely.
Because they're sort of racing forward about it, like driving into where it's like completely nuts.
Yeah, and just imagine you're the 8th Fallschirmjäger regiment or whatever, division, very, very understrength. You've just been absolutely pummeled by round after round after round coming in and smashing, obliterating the entire village. And then flamethrowers come in.
Yeah.
I'd hand hock.
But also driving one of those things, one bullet and you go up with the propellant. I mean, they're not well armoured anyway, carriers. If you're driving around basically with an enormous tank of pressurised napalm.
Only they can make a few more crocodiles, but anyway, they can't.
Well, yeah, they can't. So this works, and the enemy defence is cracked. And then we're back to 15th Scottish, aren't we, Jim? They've crossed from 2 o'clock in the morning, and the Buffaloes are a better bet than the Stormboats. There are engine failures and men paddling, but if you're in a Buffalo, you're doing better than the lads in the Stormboats who are having engine failures and having to paddle with their rifle butts. And on the far side, 6 KOSB attack the village of Bischlich, which is defended by 1062 Grenadier Regiment. And while this fight is going on, the sappers stick up pontoon bridges to get armour across. And as soon as the first one's complete, 44th Royal Tank Regiment are across. Speed of all this is remarkable, isn't it? By dusk of the 24th of March, 15 Scottish 44 Brigade captured 1,000 POWs for less than 100 casualties. And 2nd Brigade of the 227th, they face female snipers amongst the opposition, which I think is quite interesting.
It's quite
very
interesting,
much
isn't it?
Last roll of the dice Germany stuff.
Yeah.
And they eventually clear the village of Overcamp.
Yeah.
That's the British crossing effort as part of...
And then you got the Americans.
Yeah.
in the sort of Rheinberg area.
Yeah. Ninth Army is Operation Flashpoint.
That's right.
I mean, the opening barrage is 2,070 guns, 40,000 gunners at work, directed at Walsum on the opposite bank. I mean, they fire 65,261 shells and are supported by 50.
I'm laughing about it, but it's such a huge amount. I mean, why would you continue to fight against that?
But there's no point, is there? And 1,500 bombers as well. Icon Simpson watch this. And 3 regiments of 30th Div get across, attacking Budrik, and then Wallach, the 117th Infantry attack Wallach, and then 120th go to Rheinberg. And basically, Lieutenant Whitney O'Reffin, who's taking part of this, there's no real fight to it. The artillery done the job for us. That basically, the gunnery has been so successful in basically suppressing the Germans. Suppressing and destroying.
Is this the kind of apogee of the steel, not flesh policy, do you think?
I think it probably is.
Because there's minimum casualties, isn't it?
Yeah, although as we'll see, the airborne component, which comes from that idea that you can shortcut battle somehow using technology. There's a great deal of flesh expended in that effort. German POWs, they repeatedly tell their captors they'd never experienced anything like that artillery barrage in their lives.
Yeah.
And 79th Division follow the 30th over, and 79th going at 3 o'clock in the morning. By dawn, both divisions had suffered only 31 casualties getting over the Rhine.
Together.
Between them.
Crossing the mighty River Rhine. I mean, from my point of view, that doesn't say all that preparation was necessary. That says preparation job done.
Yeah. Worked perfectly. I mean, it's like your example of Tukas battle in Tunisia, isn't it?
Yeah, Operation Strike.
Yeah, we planned it all immaculately and it comes off perfectly. So everyone's either forgotten about it or goes, well, whatever. And by nightfall, they have a bridgehead that's 3 miles wide, 3 miles deep.
That's pretty good. That's decent.
Yeah, plunder is going well, but the airborne component is Varsity. So we started with Sergeant Derek Gleister, who's 7th Parachute Battalion.
Derek Gleister.
His exploits. And obviously, what we have here is 6th Airborne Division and 17th US Airborne Division. The first thing to remember is that this is lessons of Arnhem. And if there are 2 lessons of Arnhem, they are, everyone says this immediately after Arnhem, you can only use 1 lift. If you divide your effort, you're wasting your time and your people.
Yeah.
So there is only 1 lift. Right?
But it's still 16,000 men, isn't it?
I know. There's a 3rd Division penciled for this, and they're sacked off. So it's British 6th, US 17th. And the other great lesson of Arnhem, as we all know, is don't land too far from your objectives. So basically, your glider landing in particular has to do 2 things. It has to be a mass landing, so you can land in companies and as a brigade. But it also needs to be tactical landings to take bridges and key points. And it's really in the glider landings where the rub comes. And I think, interestingly, they're kind of back to what they were doing on D-Day, which is the idea that you assist the river crossing or the shore landing, by taking things ahead of the river crossing. It's airborne re-rolling over and over again. It's the story since D-Day. And they're now under Major General, 6th Airborne are now under the command of Major General Eric Bowles.
Yes. Is he good?
Well, he's not an airborne man, so it's the same principle as Urquhart. He's not an airborne man. He's been brought in by Monty, but he's very much under Windy Gale's eye. And Gale has made sure that 6th
Gale
Airborne...
been bumped upstairs?
Yes, exactly. And in the meantime, 6th Airborne are sent into the Bulge battle, fed in, and there's some very stiff fighting around Bure in particular. But he's been rehearsing. The thing he's been making sure they rehearse is close air support.
Yes.
Because there's your other lesson of Arnhem, as people will tell you. There's no close air support. And obviously there are complications as to why there isn't any. But this is different because they're not 90 miles from the airfields.
No, they're hopping a skip away, aren't they?
Exactly. And they run a big exercise in Marlow or somewhere like that, where they do a river crossing exercise to practice the close air support aspect and the radio aspect in December. So they're rehearsing for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it means they're plugged into the close air support and 21st Army Group's guns. And we've talked about how effective the gunnery is. The critical thing for 6th Airborne is there aren't any glider pilots. They're all in the, basically...
They've all been put in a bag.
The vast majority of the glider pilot regiment is in the bag. And so George Chatterton, who's the commander-in-chief of the glider pilot regiment, he goes to the RAF, and he's an ex-fighter pilot. He's a fighter pilot in the 1930s. And has that thing where he has an accident in the late 30s and loses his nerve, can't fly. And then he joins the Guards and he fights at Dunkirk and all, in the BEF. So he's this peculiar RAF Guardsman hybrid. So he goes to the RAF and says, I need 1,500 pilots and I need them now. And the RAF give him all these trained pilots because the war's ending, and he gets this huge slab of people who are then repurposed as glider pilots. You can't imagine they're pleased about that. And I met one at the museum in Gloucester ages ago.
Was he pissed off?
Yeah. Didn't know he was in his glider, wasn't interested, couldn't have cared less. So, but
I never want to be a glider pilot.
So the tasks are 18th US Airborne Corps, which comprises 6 Airborne and 17th Airborne divisions. They're to seize the Dies Fortewald, which is the wooded region which overlooks the crossing places.
Fortewald.
The Dies Fortewald. So they're seizing high ground.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to grab the artillery and overpower the artillery.
And observers, presumably.
And all that, right? And also bridges and exits.
Yep.
So 6th Airborne comprises of 3 brigades, and their tasks are, and I'll just rattle through this. 3rd Parachute Brigade, which is 8th, 9th, the 1st Canadian. They're to land first on DZA by the village of Bergen on the northwest edge of the Dies Fortewald, which is 2 miles from everyone else, from the rest of the division, cut the road, secure the northern
That feels manageable, doesn't it?
It does, especially as the river crossings are already underway. 22nd Independent Company, they have to mark the DZs.
Yep.
Though 8 Power actually have their own Pathfinder element, who drop from sort of 300 feet. It's completely ridiculous. 5th Parachute Brigade, which is 7, 12 and 13. They're next on DZB, northwest of the main divisional position. They've got seized road junctions, standby for counterattacks. And 7th Parachute Battalion are landing as going straight in to be the Brigade Reserve. And they've got anti-tank troops and a field ambulance coming. And then 3rd, and this is, to be honest, it's the glider component that's the most interesting in all this. 6th Air Landing Brigade, which is 2nd Oxford Bucks, which is, after all, also known in all the accounts, the 52nd Regiment of Foot. They're known in army history as the people who deliver the coup de grace at Waterloo. So everyone calls them the 52nd. 12th Devons, 1st Royal Ulster Regiment. And they're going to land in a market garden style, so great big massed glider landing so that you've got everyone there and all their kit. And they're going to do coup de main on the individual targets is the idea. And Chatterton has come up with this sort of twin-headed approach.
And is this a good idea, do you think?
Well, we're going to find out, Jim.
Right.
Because after all, one of the reasons you choose the drop zones at Arnhem or the landing zones at Arnhem that you do is so your gliders can land safely, not near flak, and everyone can form up in good style and move off in good order, right? What we're not doing, we're landing on the guns here. They're 6th Airborne are landing on the guns. So the Oxen Bucks have got to seize the bridges at Hammonkeln, which is a village just over the river. RUR are landing to the south for more bridges, and then the Devons are landing last to seal the exits. And they've got anti-tank troops, sappers, field ambulance. The 6th Airborne Recce Squadron that has Locust tanks and heavy mortars. They've got big mortars. Anyway, divisional troops, they're in the tail. They can't be lifted in. So they're all wearing their red berets inside out on the other side of the river until the planes fly over, at which point they're ordered to turn their berets back round to red berets.
Correct.
And the critical thing is these landings are happening after the...
Yes, they're 10 o'clock the following day, aren't they? 24th of March.
So they're already, the commandos are already ashore. 15 Scottish are already ashore. This is the point. 3rd Parachute Brigade, they land. But what's interesting is the Germans, as we heard in an earlier episode, had expected an airborne landing before the Rhine. Before a Rhine crossing, not after it. So once the actual crossing commences, the men who've been waiting on the DZs are moved to the river.
They're kind of off their alert.
Yeah, well, they moved up to the river to try and counter the landings.
Okay, so that does work.
So that works. So 3 Para Brigade land, and they do all right. They arrive 9 minutes early, which also means German flak gunners are still reeling from the 21st Army Artillery bombardment.
Well, I don't blame them for that. So, how does it all go then?
Well, they do all right, but what it comes down to, 8 Para, then they land at 9:51. It's not too much resistance to start with. They dig in. Then their battalion gliders arrive at 11 a.m. and one of them crashes into the battalion positions. Lieutenant Colonel Hewitson emerges from the wreckage with the pilot dead, his intelligence officer, 2 sergeants killed, shouting, "How now, you whoring bastard shite!" Because he's not happy at the glider landing on his headquarters. The resistance stiffens during the day, but they repulse it. Now, the Canadians, they land on gun positions, and their Lieutenant Colonel Nicklin lands in a tree and is above a machine gun position, is killed there and then. All of C Company's officers disappear during the day, so the sergeants have to take over. They take the objectives, they hang on. Similar story with A Company.
Yeah.
There's Corporal Topham, who, and everyone witnesses this in the Canadian Battalion, everyone knows about this. He sees 2 medical orderlies killed, so he goes out to help a wounded man. He's shot through the face. The bullet pings off his cheek and comes out through his nose. He's blood pouring from his face. continues to help the wounded man, carries us to safety, gets patched up. On his way back to his unit, he finds a burning carrier, rescues the men from the carrier, and as he walks away, the carrier explodes. And so
Bloody hell.
Yeah, he's awarded a VC. And this is a guy who should be shot through the face.
Yeah, you can't argue that, can you?
No. Then 9 para, they land at 10:03, and they
He's
do
always
really well.
still in charge of them at this point.
No, I don't think he is. I think it's someone else. Anyway, they sit tight. Then the brigade sits tight. 15th Scots come to relieve them at the end of the day. 5th Para Brigade, they jump, and the bombardment and the smoke screen pumped over the Rhine means that they can't work out where they are jumping from. And in that account, in Derek Glaister's account,
even though they're in the middle of the day.
Yeah. So the big idea is you land by daylight to make it all easier. But actually, if there's a great big smoke,
you can't see diddly squat if it's covered in smoke.
Exactly. So 13 Para, they're shelled on arrival. Their DZ's open ground, so there's no cover. But they push on. They take their road junction to Hammerkeln. They dig in. They deal with counterattacks. 12 Para land in the wrong place. And so the 2IC leads them back across the drop zone to where they ought to be. No cover, shelling casualties. And then again, 7 Para experience something similar. But it's the gliders that I think is the...
Right.
Second Ox and Bucks take 400 casualties coming into land.
Wow, that's a lot.
And you see, and because of the smoke, you can't do the tactical landings, the coup de main landings that they're trying to execute.
Yeah. That's a lot, isn't it? Crikey.
Yeah. There's a 591 Para Squadron RE who are, they're a sapper element, but they have guys in gliders going with the Ox and Bucks, going with the 52nd, as they call it. And, they're dispersed amongst gliders.
Yeah.
And the diary is, I know we sort of dissed the diaries earlier, but this diary is like a bald resume of how dangerous glider landing is at this point. So it's parties of 5 spread across the gliders, identical composition. So it's jeeps, trailers, mine clearance stores, sapper, blah, blah, including paint and brushes, right? Glider 1, which is Captain Harbord and Lance Sergeant Adams and 2 sappers. It's believed this glider landed safely at the point shown on the overlay, but then was shot up by an 88 at 100 yards range. Lance Sergeant Adams, the only survivor, and he's evacuated on D+1 because he's got battle shock. Glider 2, this glider lands at the spot shown on the, everything's recovered intact, no casualties. Glider 3, the wreckage of this glider was found at the spot, no survivors. Believe the glider was hit in the air. Glider 4, no trace has yet been found of this glider, the occupants. Glider 5, landed at the correct spot, details to follow. Glider 6, crash landed at the spot shown on, all escaped uninjured from glider, but several shells landed close by.
God, it's a luck of the devil, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's 2 out of 6 of these gliders do okay. Of the 440 gliders allocated, right, 402 reach the landing zones, which is a loss rate that's of 8%, which is regarded as acceptable. But only 88 gliders land without damage. Right?
Wow.
This is a bad and bloody business, right?
Yes, isn't it?
It's going to have to be the end of glider-borne ops, this. Yes, the lesson of Arnhem is you land on your target, but this is the risk 1st Airborne were trying to avoid in September. This kind of disaster for the air landing crews. And
so is your take that Varsity is necessary?
Well, I think it probably is, but this is what it costs.
How do the 17th Airborne get on?
Well, they don't have anything like the trouble, but they have scattered drops. And in fact, some of 17th Airborne end up fighting alongside 6th Airborne because they're all in the wrong place and helping out. But the crossing they're supporting has gone better. So they don't have anything like this kind of...
So they're behind down at Rheinberg?
Yeah.
They're quite separate from this.
Yeah. Although, as I say, there's in the confusion. The other big problem is that they're using the Skytrain, the next plane along from the Dakota, which doesn't have sealable fuel tanks. So when they're hit by a flak, those planes go down in flames. So that's the problem 17th Airborne are having to deal with. But basically, you can't land glider-borne troops in broad daylight where there's flak.
Because they are literally gliding in, which by its very nature suggests they're not coming in particularly fast.
Yeah.
And, they're quite a big thing, and they're absolutely easy as pie to shoot down.
Yeah, exactly. And once they've landed, they're easy to shoot up. And so in a strange way, the parachute landings where the blokes might be scattered and then gather up and all that, that's safer for the lads than it is for all arriving in a great big juicy glider that an 88 can destroy. And between the 2 airborne divisions, it's 2,700 casualties. The sort of problem here is that the idea of a glider is you land a bunch of men all together in one place and kit, and they lose half their jeeps. And the big idea of the horse of gliders, you can bring in jeeps and anti-tank guns. But if you lose half of them are lost.
It's sort of pointless, isn't it?
It's pointless. And obviously no one's invented the helicopter yet.
No.
Quite. Which is what's going to replace all this. I think whatever the advantages of the gliders are, they're basically completely ruled out by trying to land in daylight on flak targets. And in a way, it completely justifies the worries that drive the decision-making around Market Garden.
Yeah.
It's a bad bloody business. Anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a glider.
No, I don't. I mean, you look, you read enough.
I mean, the whole idea of it just, crash landing in the first place isn't exactly appealing, is it?
No. You have enough accounts where people say that every time I got on one, I thought I was going to die.
Yeah. Well, one would.
One would. Anyway, join us after the break where we try and cheer you up with 7th Army crossing the Rhine. See you in a tick. Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. So that's Plunder and Varsity. Now, Jim.
Phew, that just felt like a big hurdle to get over, but we've done it.
Like the Rhine itself.
400 yards. Yes.
Right, so 7th Army, Jim.
Yes. So 7th Army's crossings are led by 15 Corps, which is under Major General Wade H. Hayslip, who's a former classmate and pal of Eisenhower. And actually, it's Hayslip who has introduced to his wife, Mamie.
Ah.
Yeah, back in 1915.
Oh, a little dash of romance there.
A little bit. But 15 Corps launches its crossing across over the Rhine on Palm Sunday, which is the 25th of March. Crosses with the 45th Thunderbirds and the 3rd Rock of Marne divisions. So these are the two that have been, they've been landed in North Africa in November 1942, Sicily, Italy, Anzio. They've been there, done it. Operation Dragoon on the 15th of August in southern France, all the way up, and then into the Southern Reich. Anyway, there's estimated to be remnants of 22 German divisions on the other side, although what that actually means is not quite clear. It certainly doesn't mean 22 divisions of 1940 standard.
It means the headquarters of 22 German divisions, essentially, doesn't it?
In fact, the main defences really are Hitler Youth and New Volkssturm units, which is, and Volkssturm, as we were saying the other day, these are the home guards where, these are people 16 to 60, and they usually are 16 and 60 rather than much in between. And crude bunkers there, sort of made out of made by slave labour and defended by, inverted commas, fortress battalions created by Guderian the previous autumn. All along the western borders. But these are, all this sort of talk of festings and fortresses and, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
They're good sounding words, but the reality is coming a long way short,
yeah.
is the truth of it. And, these are defenders who are equipped with almost no heavy weapons at all. So it is machine guns, it's rifles, it's Panzerfaust, it's people on bicycles, if any transport at all, but otherwise on foot. It's all a bit hopeless. Ragtaggle uniforms.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
So to deal with this ragtag bunch of waifs and strays, 3rd Division do a 38-minute barrage of more than 10,000 shells.
Yes.
I mean, God.
Yeah. So they get across without any problem whatsoever. Have a bit of a fight to secure the bridgehead, but not much. 45th of Thunderbirds actually make a silent crossing without a barrage for once. They start in their plywood storm boats. At 2:30 a.m. on the 25th of March. I always think this is sort of slightly odd because, if you're doing it in a storm boat and you're doing a silent attack, the Germans are going, silent. Was ist that? It's a very big mosquito. I mean, it's I'm not sure that I'd want to do a silent attack.
No.
I just want to smother them with artillery, stun the bastards into submission and then get across would be my approach. But anyway, be that as it may. But the first wave gets across okay, but the sound of engines inevitably cuts through the night and the second wave comes in under fire and they lose half their craft.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. Both the divisions are allotted 14 DD Shermans. These are the duplex drive ones, like swimming tanks with the canvas surround, first used on D-Day. Bridging is in place by the second day, 26th of March, which allows half tracks with 50 caliber quads. And these just absolutely create havoc. I mean, if you're going to attack undertrained, terrified 16-year-olds and 50-somethings, badly equipped, going across with 50 caliber quads is exactly what you want. So these are half tracks with 4 50 caliber mounted in 4s on the back of this half track, and they are just absolutely horrific to be on the receiving end of. Yeah. They're utter beasts. Yeah. And by the end of the day on the 26th of March, so this is the second day, so it's launched on the evening of the 25th. 8 battalions of artillery, 2 anti-tank battalions, and 2 tank destroyer battalions across. So again, a substantial amount of firepower. And in the centre, near Worms, the 1,000-foot Alexander Patch Bridge, which is a heavy pontoon bridge, has been built successfully.
Incredible.
So within 5 days, so by the 30th of March, Hayslip's entire 15th Corps of 6 entire divisions is across and on the way to the River Main, which is sort of the next stretch beyond.
Incredible.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this is one that is just textbook. And I suppose, the earlier crossings have already kind of sort of paved the way, which means that the defence on the eastern side of the Rhine is already starting to crumble, the entire length of it.
This just justifies strategy, right? As you cross in lots of different places kind of simultaneously.
Yes, which is why Ninth Army shouldn't have gone to Erdogan. Just to stress the point. What tends to happen in the telling of the Rhine's crossings is there's lots and lots about pattern, there's lots and lots about Remagen.
Yeah.
And there's a fair amount about plunder. And usually it's about how the Americans gloated for getting there first. So what? Well done. It's not a race. Might be to pattern, but it's not to anybody else. But the 7th Army and French Army, 1st Army crossings just get completely ignored, as does 6th Army Group generally. It's just not part of the narrative, is it?
No, it's not. No.
So we're going to be different.
I mean, you're absolutely right. This doesn't feature at all. The sort of extent. Yes, it's Remagen, Patton. Oh, boring old Monty is basically the story of the Rhine crossing, isn't it? Whereas in fact, you have General Joseph de Montsabert.
Yeah, he's one of the legends from casino operations and Battle for Rome and all the rest of it. So they don't have any of their own combat bridging, but General Robert Dromard, who is General Jean de Lattre de Tassigny's chief engineer, and de Lattre is the commander of the French First Army. Dromard is the chief engineer. He's been picking up older pontoon bridges hidden during the occupation. French have squirreled away. And also salvaging US and even German spans, which have either been abandoned or damaged on their way. Because, the Germans still have to bridge stuff. Because the Allies are going and blowing stuff up, so they're having to bridge it. So in all, they've got enough for a 1,000-foot bridge suitable for infantry and trucks, but not armour. But they're absolutely determined not to be kept out of this. And it's quite interesting because by this stage, the Allies are not terribly interested in the French pushing too far.
No.
We've got this.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because they don't want the French getting in the way post-war.
Yes, well, they're worried about France being politically in on the victory, aren't they? They don't want that to happen.
They don't want that. And Roosevelt's always been very, very down on the French. Remember, very down on de Gaulle. He's given way. De Gaulle has become the kind of accepted leader of the French until true and fair elections can be held. And Roosevelt has only agreed to this with great reluctance the previous summer of 1944. The Americans generally are quite down on the French, even though they're equipping them.
Well, and France has been liberated. So that's the end of, you don't need any help. Thanks very much. But,
they're all in it together. So in 6th Army Group, Major General Edward H. Brooks, who commands 6th Corps of the 7th Army, offers to lend the French some more of his bridging at 2 sites, at Speyer and Gemersheim. So they've got their 1,000-foot single pontoon bridge, capable for trucks and infantry. They've got these 2 other sites at Speyer and Gemersheim. And that means that the French can start getting a bit more across. So 2 Corps, which is de Montsabert, he is due to cross on the 31st of March with regiments from 2 divisions. And it is at this point that General de Gaulle, the leader of the French, who is the accepted leader, it has to be said.
Yeah.
Albeit with that reluctance from Roosevelt, insists that de Lattre hurry up and prevent the Americans from taking the cities of Karlsruhe and Stuttgart, which, of course, Karlsruhe is sort of very much in the sort of Alsace-Lorraine kind of neck of the woods. And they kind of see that in their sphere of influence. And de Gaulle has actually got bigger ideas. So he wants them to get a move on. And so he writes to de Lattre and says, Mon cher General. No, it would be General, wouldn't it?
General.
You must cross the Rhine, even if the Americans are not agreeable. And even if you have to cross it in boats, it is a matter of the greatest national interest. Karlsruhe and Stuttgart await you, even if they do not want you.
Yes. I mean,
so it does cause quite a bit of controversy in the days that follow. Yes, it says good old de Gaulle putting his oar in again. Anyway, in the meantime, the French 2 Corps under de Montsabert do cross a day early on the evening of the 30th of March, and with the infantry crossing in rubber dinghies. And some of these men, amazingly, are veterans of the defence of Sedan back in 1914. They're absolutely determined to get across, and they do. And the 10-ton, 1,000-foot span bridge does get across by 10 p.m. and the Algerian division make it over.
Amazing.
Much further south then, at Gemersheim, where Brooks has generously handed over some bridging, the crossing assault is led by Colonel Gandoé of the 131st. Remember him?
Yes, absolutely.
So he's the chap who leads the assault on Monte Abate near Casino. And, he and only a few of his guys from the 9th Infantry.
Extraordinary fellow
get back. The 9th Brigade, isn't he? No, it's the 9th Infantry of the 9th Brigade. Anyway, whatever it is. I can't remember now. But anyway, it's that previous January. And do you remember he gets back, doesn't he? And only a few people. And he gets wounded in the wrist and literally everyone's dead by the time he gets back. It's an
extraordinary story. But yes, they hang on, don't they?
But anyway, his attack goes badly. Assault craft are late arriving. And so they start in daylight early on the 31st of March, by which point the Germans are alert. And only 3 of the 10 accursed stormboats get across. And although one company does eventually make it over, they're hammered by German counterattacks. But they do hold on to the bridgehead. Gandouet does seem to kind of attract really brutal counterattacks and last stands and this kind of thing.
But also has the ability to withstand them. So, I mean,
Well, this is it, big determination. So one of his battalions suffers 85 killed in action and 51 wounded out of 500. I mean, these are quite big losses. It's a quarter of your troops. But they gradually build up strength, expand the bridgehead as more US stormboats arrive. Everyone's absolutely delighted to see them. And Brooks also lends some more bridging to allow armour and vehicles to get across. So they then do burst out of the narrow bridgehead on Easter Day, which is the 1st of April. So it's kind of it's a bit harsh, I think, that the French are kind of always left out of the narrative of this, because they actually do pretty well with substantially less equipment, Jim, and artillery support than anyone else.
If anyone is improvising getting across the Rhine, bouncing the Rhine, if anyone is doing it,
it's the only French. Improvisation.
The people only actually who beg, borrow, and steal stuff the way that Patton says.
Patton absolutely doesn't.
Yeah, but says he will.
That's such
or tells
a good
his men
point.
to.
That's such a good point.
The people actually scraping a crossing and pulling out the bag are the French. And they get to Karlsruhe. De Latre then storms Karlsruhe on the 4th of April, while the 9th Colonial and 2nd Moroccan divs. And that's the other thing that's interesting about this, isn't it? Is this French army is an imperial French army.
It's a colonial army. It's made up of troops from the Army of Africa. So basically, the French army is divided into 3. There's the colonial army, there's the French Army of Africa, and then there is the Metropolitan Army, which is the home army. The Metropolitan Army is the one that's gone.
Yes.
French First Army is drawn from troops from the Colonial Army and the French Army of Africa.
Yeah. So 2nd Moroccan Division pushes south to Strasbourg. I mean, I think it's really interesting, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
That if you're German, you're now getting beaten by blokes from North Africa, having tried to fight a race war. That must be pretty unpalatable.
Yes.
And by the 15th of April, the whole of French First Army's across after 5.5 years since the Saar campaign of October 1940.
What a operation of infamy that was.
Yeah, I mean, they took their time, but they're back. France is back, baby.
The back door was open in the autumn of 1939, but they didn't take it, but they are now. And I think it's fair to say they are transformed by this point.
It's not even the French army from 1940, is it? It's a different army.
They're transformed. They're equipped by the Americans for the most part. Yeah. American uniforms, American tanks, American hardware, all the rest of it. They're also supported by 12 squadrons, French squadrons in the RAF.
Yeah.
So the RAF has become a truly polyglot air force of Belgians and Dutch and Norwegians and Canadians and goodness knows what.
That's a very good point, actually, Jim, because whenever people talk about the Battle of Britain, people go, but don't forget the Polish and the Czech pilots who flew for, why do we always forget them? Well, the end of the war, it's that, but even more so. It's not just the Battle of Britain. That's how the RAF rolls out for the rest of the war, right?
Yeah.
It's not just in that singular moment. It's the way the thing operates. Because after all, you need people who can fly. It doesn't matter where they're from. It's a technical arm, isn't it?
Yep.
More than anything else. As April begins, the Germans have 67 divisions in the west and 163 divisions in the east, but you can call them divisions if you want. These are the headquarters of 67 divisions in the west and 163 in the east. Dubious strength. And there's 150,000 troops still tied up in the Channel port festings. How many people are in Norway? It's a couple 100,000, isn't it?
300,000.
God! And when it comes to it, it's the remnants of 1st Airborne Division who are sent to sort of put all those people in the bag, which is incredible.
Absolutely unbelievable. 23 divisions in Italy.
Yeah, who are about to cop it, the full weight of Mark Clark's 2 Allied armies in the north. And then there's 12 divisions of the Balkans of the Eastern Mediterranean for no good reason. I mean, what are they doing there?
What are they doing there?
It's very weird.
And in contrast, Eisenhower's got 91 full-strength divisions, including 25 armoured divisions, plus absolutely phenomenal air power as well, which despite ME-262s and Arados kind of screaming around the place, are absolutely ruling the roost.
ME-163s dissolving their pilots even as they... the horror.
Yes, the hydrochloric acid or whatever they've got.
Oh, God.
No, hydrogen peroxide, isn't it?
That's right.
Which, if you have a single drop of it left in the tank when you land, you'll blow up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and if it comes into contact with organic matter, it will blow up.
It's actually a powered glider.
It's a powered glider. It's not a jet. It's not even an
7
aeroplane.
minutes it's got, isn't it? 7 minutes of power. It's so mad.
100% Nazi death trap. That's the...
yeah, exactly. So we got to mention the werewolves, although I'm sort of reluctant to, really, but we got to. So all this sort of werewolf stuff, it is all part of the kind of Nazi insanity at the end of the war, where they've lost so badly. It's just, the only other example really is Japan, where you're in so much trouble, but you're still fighting. You're still sort of deluded enough to keep going on. And I think the frustration of kind of writing about this stuff is just, it's insane, the madness of it, that there's any point in fighting anymore.
Well, I think it's really interesting because what we've got here is, they set up Radio Werwolf, and the Goebbels propaganda here is this. It's the same old
shtick.
It's the shtick they've been doing the last, churning out the last 15, 20 years. We must become the flames to lick and burn our enemies. We must become the dynamite to blow up our foes. We must become the toxin to poison the invaders. We must become the knives to cut them up. We must continue the fight until the last foreign soldier has been driven from the Reich or the last attacker has been buried in a mass grave in Germany. Yada, yada, yada.
I mean, it's just claptrap, isn't it?
Get over it, you're lost. I mean, it's very strange, isn't it? Because in a way, what it sort of says, that rhetoric, they have no other way of expressing themselves, the Nazis.
Oh, it's done.
The rhetorical corner they've painted themselves into, and rather than go, you know what, we lost, they have to. He keeps churning this. Fair cut. We bit off more than we could chew. In a way, Hitler's saying in his last will and testament, maybe the Germans aren't the master race after all. I set them a test and they have failed it, which is what he says at the end of the war, isn't it?
Yeah. James has just put in the notes on the side, our producer has just said, reminds me of the Japanese orders at Iwo Jima. Well, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's so mad. I can't think of any other, in all previous wars, you fight until you're not going to win.
Yes, of course.
I mean, obviously, there's plenty of examples through history of people sort of fighting to the last man and all the rest of it. But the general kind of pattern is that, when you're not going to win and you've run out of cash, you throw in the towel, compared with, CF 1918.
Too many people are getting killed. I mean,
all that.
But it's also, I mean, it's how they express themselves in terms of fighting. So it's just the same old yada yada, and of course they can't do it. So
the werewolf idea is nonsense, because literally everyone they've got has already been handed a Panzerfaust or a rifle. Yeah. So where are they going to get these people for these werewolf units? I mean, the truth is, the idea behind it is that the stragglers that have left behind, you are behind the lines, you haven't been put in the bag. It's all a bit like the Russian partisans, and we'll galvanize them into an organization. The big difference is that the Soviet Union is vast, and there isn't much infrastructure, and there's plenty, there's immense forests in which you can hide. Well, there are lots of forests in Germany too, but it's not quite the same. It's a much more sort of dense, smaller area. And the truth is, there aren't that many people straggling behind, prisoners who haven't been rounded up.
But also the situation's completely different. Germany has no friends at this point, and the country's in the grip of defeat, whereas the Red Army had friends, room for manoeuvre, opportunity, and all the rest of it.
Be that as it may, I mean, however desperate it is, the werewolf units that kind of formed the previous October, they're more of a kind of a concept on paper than reality, is the truth of it. And the task is given to Obergruppenführer Hans Adolf Prutzemann, who is a previous Einsatzgruppen commander from the Eastern Front, and is a deeply unpleasant person, but who's studied Soviet partisan techniques and believes that he can apply this to, something in the West, which he can't. Training camps are ostensibly set up, but again, nothing really happens. Prutzmann's doctrine is, your opponent will be obliged to deprive his frontline troops, which must instead be employed for security of his rear areas. He will lose vital material and cannot employ it against our soldiers. Everything that handicaps the opposition helps our troops.
Whatever.
There's only one way you can help your troops, and that's throwing the towel, mate.
Yeah.
That is the truth of it.
Yes, throw your rifle bolts in the river. Get on with
it.
Yeah. But the Allies are sort of
They're a bit spooked by it.
Yeah, and also it offers Ike, an absolutely fantastic reason to not go to Berlin, beyond admitting.
Do you think he ever believes the Alpine Redoubt? So the Alpine Redoubt, for those who don't know, this is the idea there's going to be a kind of final last stand in the mountains, and it's going to be very, very difficult because they're going to be in the mountains and they've been stockpiling for years, and it'll be like besieging a sort of mountain fortress, and everyone's conscious of what happened in Italy and all the rest of it. But clearly it's all balls. I think
it's balls. And I don't think Ike believes it, but Ike needs reasons to not go to Berlin and expend another 100,000 people. The casualty projections are bad.
Yeah. So this is his political out, basically.
Yeah, it's Japan. Everyone's thinking about the war in the East to come, to the point where they're not mentioning it. I think is the interesting thing. They all just know it. They don't need to talk about it, which is why they're focusing on the thing right in front of them. I mean, then the Allies basically swoop into Germany, don't they? Big time. Monty orders Dempsey and Simpson to drive onto the Elbe, which is just 50 miles from Berlin. Canadians are across also. They are ordered to swing round.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about them in the next episode as well.
Yeah, finish the job in Holland.
Yep.
Plan is 9th Army will drive around the Northern Ruhr, connect with 1st Army, and the Ruhr's entirely encircled. 1st Army are like really, really motoring.
Yeah. Hodges has got his mojo back.
Yeah, exactly. 3rd Army are speeding eastwards. Patton's having one of his fantastic breakouts where he's making many, many miles when there's no one in front of him.
Yeah. Frankfurt's captured on the 29th of March.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing. It's amazing, really. But I mean, this is all, and this is all legacy of the Battle of the Bulge. There is no one to stop any of this because it's been squandered. There is then the controversy between Monty, 21st Army Group, and Ike. Monty wants to go to Berlin. Ike's not interested, as we've discussed. Let the Red Army do it. Monty gets upset about this, and he writes to Churchill, and he says that basically...
because Monty's hammering Churchill. Churchill's also, a bit disappointed, feels very sort of disconnected from the Americans now.
And they do
feel... He's writing directly to Eisenhower, and Eisenhower writes back.
Well, but they feel, don't they, that if they're Britain, this is Britain's last chance to be politically in on the end of the war. That we're outnumbered
and they've been
now
since 1939, after all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, Eisenhower replies to Churchill and says, as soon as the U.S. 9th and 1st Armies join hands and the enemy encircled in rural areas incapable of further offensive action, I propose driving eastwards to join hands with the Russians or to attain the general line of the Elbe. This will be my main thrust, and until it is quite clear the concentration of all our effort on it alone will not be necessary, I am prepared to direct all my forecasts to ensuring its success. It lies in Bradley's zone. Full stop.
In other words, get your nose out of my business.
Yeah. Well, there is absolutely no question that the high watermark of the coalition, which I think you can argue is sort of D-Day and the next 2 months up to the beginning of August, it is definitely imbalanced now.
Yeah, that's over. Yeah.
This is an American show. They've come out on top as top dog, and they're not really interested in bleating by the British anymore.
Yeah. And Ike goes as far as to tell Stalin that that's what he's going to do, and that the Soviets can have Berlin without referring to anybody. Just gets on with it.
And everyone's really upset about that. Well, because they've got to live in Europe afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. And Churchill says that the Soviet Union has become a mortal danger to the free world. I deem it highly important that we shake hands with the Russians as far east as possible.
From the British point of view, and indeed the French point of view, get those commies out of here and get them as far back, as far east as you possibly can get them. From the American point of view, we've still got Japan.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to do the lion's share of that. And we're not interested. We don't really care if Eastern Europe ends up in a communist state.
Yeah.
We agreed back in December 1941 that we'd beat the Nazis first.
Yeah. Whatever. And
didn't involve taking Berlin necessarily.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the American military tradition is in theory to destroy the enemy where you find him, not get hung up about places and political symbols. You destroy the enemy's military capability, make him sue for peace, and that's the Civil War speaking through history 80 years later. Also, Okinawa's kicking off at this point, so I mean, this
1st of April. Which is the same day. So the landings in Okinawa, which ends up being literally the bloodiest battle of the whole of Second World War, launched on the 1st of April, which is the same day the 1st and 9th Armies link up at Lippstadt, which means that the entire Ruhr area is surrounded. Yeah. So this is a huge, great encirclement. Absolutely reminiscent of the German encirclements of the Russians back in 1941. But anyway, there's a huge gap now in Kesselring's tottering line, because you'll remember that Kesselring takes over from Rundstedt as OB West, which is the higher command in the West.
Rundstedt is not suing for constructive dismissal at this point, though, is he? He's
No.
come back.
But the whole of Myrtle's Army Group B is swallowed up into the Ruhr pocket. Hitler then does his Nero order. This is the scorched earth policy to destroy everything. But actually, Albert Speer, who's his chief architect, says, please don't do that to Myrtle, and Myrtle doesn't.
Yes. Well, Speer's eyeing the exit, isn't he? Basically,
he's eyeing the exit,
thinking,
but also, he's also thinking what's going to happen post-war. But he's also, to be fair, there's not much left in the Ruhr anyway.
Yeah.
Brutally honest.
That is actually a very good point. What is there to destroy?
Yeah.
The Allies have given it a good go.
And of course, the problem in the Ruhr pocket is it's they're being bombed, comms are breaking down, the shortages, ammo running out. It's absolutely hopeless. And eventually, Myrtle doesn't have any choice but to surrender his entire 325,000 troops, including 30 generals. All are put in the bag. But the one officer who's not in that is Myrtle, who goes off into the woods fully dressed in his absolute field marshal's kit with his bat and then shoots himself in the head. And he's worried about being captured by the Russians. That is what that's about. And all his papers are at Freiburg, and they're very, very extensive. Myrtle's papers. They're fascinating, including diary of his wife and all sorts of stuff. Accounts of we talked about this the other day, didn't we?
Yeah.
But the account of his death. There's an eyewitness account of his suicide. Fascinating stuff.
Yes, I mean he'd have gone to the gallows, wouldn't he? So
yeah.
He's
his grandson still is doing something good. I can't remember what.
All right, that's cool. And the French First Army, they're on the southern flank of 7th Army's right. De Lattre has been under huge pressure from de Gaulle, of course, to take the Catholic part of southwest Germany. Because de Gaulle's across the fact that the Allies are planning to carve Germany up into sectors. He knows that the plans from Yalta. Yep. So he wants France to get its hands on Stuttgart and Schwarzwald.
Yes.
But in the meantime, Devers doesn't know.
Being the Black Forest, of course, which is where Freiburg is, which is where I was.
But well, you were looking at Myrtle's papers.
Exactly that.
Yeah, Devers doesn't know about this and has no plans for the French to do any of this. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? That the French are improvising and the Americans aren't. And he's told by Schaeff to...
it's really interesting.
Devers is told to keep the French movements across the Rhine to a minimum. He's only, they're only allowed to go 40 miles. But de Lattre has 9 divisions across the Rhine. And they go for the Schwarzwald. They push to the Danube, and they get to Ulm, and they get into Austria, which I think is quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, they do.
And at the same time, de Lattre orders his 2nd Corps to drive 50 miles northeast and take Stuttgart.
That's de Montseber, you remember him?
Yeah. And this is going to create de Gaulle's occupation zone. It's the big idea.
Yeah, and they do, and they get there. So by the 21st of April, the 1st Armoured Division is crossing the Danube, and de Montseber's 2 Corps is entering Stuttgart. So they absolutely crush the Wehrmacht 64 Corps in the process. But in doing so, they quite badly cut across into 7th Army's area. Yeah. So the French have taken Stuttgart a day earlier than the US 100th Division, which is just sort of fast on its heels. So it's kind of Messina in reverse or whatever. Yeah. Devers has Jacob Devers, who is the commander of the 6th Army Group, he has intended that the US 7th Army use Stuttgart as a logistical base for patches drive far deeper into Germany. And so orders the French to get out, but de Lattre just goes, no. So Brilliant. There's a big exchange between de Lattre and Devers, and there's also a big exchange between de Lattre and de Gaulle, and Devers and Eisenhower and the chiefs of staff. And eventually it's settled by Devers being, I think, frankly, the bigger man. So he agrees that the city should serve as a base for all of 6th Army Group, but could remain occupied by the French. So, from de Gaulle's point of view,
de Gaulle gets what he wants.
And interestingly, when I was sort of, walking from my Feng Shui hotel to the archives, I was going through a whole series of residential apartment blocks, which had been the old French barracks from occupation days. And now it's got a sort of slightly hippie vibe to the whole thing.
I mean, this is interesting because this component never really gets thrown about, does it, in the mix?
No.
Allies at war. Well, look at this. This is the French doing whatever they damn well choose. The Americans, in the end, having to accommodate it. This isn't the same old Monty Patton who's best nonsense, is it? It's a whole other picture book of and
the frankly brilliant improvisation by the French, who are materially very much the kind of
junior partner.
Partner, yeah, exactly. Anyway, in the next episode, we're going to be looking at the ongoing Allied drive into Germany and also the grim discoveries of German concentration camps.
Yes.
And of course, the horrors that those reveal.
Thanks everyone for listening. If you want to listen to all these in one dollop without ads as well, go to our Apple channel and become officer class. It's easy to obtain a commission, and we have ways of making you talk fraternity. Really. You just buy it.
We're Napoleonic in that way. We
Good old days
you can buy them.
Napoleonic wars. Yeah, exactly. Or subscribe to our Patreon. We hope to see you at We Have Ways Fest in the autumn, 12th to 14th September, where you can chew this kind of cud with us in person and with other fellow afflicted enthusiasts. Tickets flying out. Speakers have been announced, or some of the speakers. There's more to come. And thanks very much for listening. We will see you soon. Cheerio.
Cheerio.
Hello, I'm James Holland.
And I'm Al Murray. We're excited to bring you our brand new book, Victory 45, The End of the War in 8 Surrenders.
From the Italian Alps to New York to Tokyo, we cover how one summer forever changed the course of history.
Victory 45 in hardback, ebook and audiobook.